Welcome to this Digital Jersey Tech Talk podcast with me, Marcus Farrell. I'm joined in the studio today with Rory Steele, aka the Jersey IT guy on Twitter, head of the Digital Jersey Academy, and previously assistant head CTO and DPO at Bolia. That's quite the introduction.
Yeah, just accrued a lot of things over the years. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. So we'll dive straight into it. For those who don't know, can you please tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, it's quite eclectic. Always been a geek. We'll get to that, I probably assume, at some point. But started off as a teacher. Could say double international at rugby as well, because Jersey counts as its own country as well as Scotland. But there you go, I'll just get that one in. But really just got into tech quite late as a teacher. I was a maths teacher and, would you believe, art teacher at one point. That's the beard, is it? And things grew, technology grew, there was a lack of space. I had a really good tutor at university who loved tech and got into that. And then kind of just that turned a corner for me. Started off at De La Salle here locally after a short stint in Liverpool, ended up at Bolia, pretty much transforming that from a few computers to now every kid has a device. And then lured away by Digital Jersey to try and take that kind of change to the rest of the island. So I think that's it in a nutshell.
Happy days. Now, Rory and I, for those who don't know, work together. And I actually now sit opposite Rory at work, so I get all of his stories.
Usually a screen here.
Yeah, with just a little screen in front of us. But I've heard all about your interest in gaming, and I know you feel it's quite integral to digital skills in general at the beginning phases.
I think it's the gateway rather than integral. I don't know many technologists that weren't gamers, but it doesn't mean you have to be a gamer to be a technologist or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. So when did your sort of interest in gaming and kind of then grow into an interest in tech, digital in general?
Oh, it started, as young. My family got a computer in the house, MS-DOS for those old enough to remember that. And we started playing those games and Doom and all the kind of stuff that you now would call retro. That was my life. And it kind of evolved as the technology evolved. You wanted to play the better and better game. And that's what I mean about it doesn't necessarily come hand in hand, but the love of the gaming meant you wanted the best thing. Right. And that's why people argue now, Xbox, PlayStation 5, they get into the nitty gritty of the tech and it's a gateway into greater things. Mm-hmm. I think that's it really. But I love computers because they save me time. I'm inherently a lazy person. And if tech can do something for me, and we're going to get to AI right today, I'm absolutely for it.
All for it. So is that why you would say that you became a teacher in the first place, to kind of share your love of being lazy and helping other people?
Teaching is a weird one for me because I was hell-bent, maths and art being one of those things that I applied for. I was quite late to the teaching game. I wanted to be an architect, right? That's the maths and art. As soon as people maths and art, well, that's weird. Architecture. Oh, that makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Commercially viable.
Yeah.
Go with that.
And my dad was a builder and he knew architects. So they sent me in maybe sixth form in to see some. And I realized unless you owned the architect's firm, you were going to be drawing dormers in Jersey for the rest of your life. And it didn't really appeal to me. And at the same time, at the school, we were kind of forced to help out our own school community. And I'll use the word because we were 17, 18, we just wanted to leg it. And they ask you what you wanted to do. And I helped the primary school kids learn how to swim. And after a bit of time with this lad who couldn't swim, a stroke, after a couple of months, we got him taking his first stroke. And it sounds cheesy, but there was a bit of an aha moment for me where I went, I made that happen, And at the time I was going through this change with architecture and the teaching thing I went, yeah, let's have a go with it. And actually did some teaching experience and found myself into teaching.
Amazing, lovely little story.
It is, isn't it? It feels fake. It feels fake because you know me. And
how much rehearsing was there done for that before the podcast? No, it's interesting. I always find it fascinating people's roots into where they are now and how different it can be for different people, especially at Digital Jersey, all working in kind of the tech and digital space, and how you've landed in this situation.
Very eclectic bunch, aren't
we? A very eclectic bunch. Now, to dive down into the crux of what this podcast is talking about, we're here to talk about education and skills. And there's a lot of questions. I know you're very passionate about the subject.
To be too honest, aren't I?
But so fundamentally, how does education need to evolve to teach students what they need for the world of work, and where are those? Where are the current gaps?
Well, I think the wider question is: has it even evolved? Right. I've been at so many professional development meetings as a teacher where they bring up this classic black and white slide of kids at a blackboard with a teacher at the front, chalk and talk, as we call it.
Hmm.
And nothing's changed. Might have put a computer screen at the front there.
It's a whiteboard now instead of a blackboard.
Yeah,
So
and it was even a computer screen now
Yeah.
as well. And some of the tools have changed, but the fundamental essence of sitting down, rote learning your education hasn't changed at all.
Hmm.
So has it evolved? No. Has the workplace evolved? Absolutely. And I won't get into a whole hour-long episode that I could easily do about the fact that the workforce is screaming out now for soft skills, and they say kids can't answer the phone right. They've got no perseverance. We hear this all the time. And then I go, hang on, teachers have been here around the circle before. You were screaming that they couldn't use Word, Office, PowerPoint. So we changed to do all that stuff, just talking about digital, not even the other subjects. And then you went, all they know how to do is Power, Word. We need them to do all the other stuff. And we do the other stuff. And then they keep coming back going, I can't do. And you just don't have enough time. And we'll come back to that word time, I think, many times today. But it needs to reduce the number of subjects and allow people to get passionate about those subjects and not focus so much on maths, English, and science. We are desperate for specific skills. So it's like if you're in Australia and you love swimming, they just let you swim. And I think schools need to adopt that approach. Let the kids follow the dreams. It sounds cheesy, but you'll get specialists because they love and are passionate about what they do.
For sure. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, especially like as a musician myself. I traditionally learned how to play drums, and then there was no interaction with technology at school with regards to music at all. And then I went to music college, and hello, here's digital audio workstations that you can produce music on, and it avoided the need for me to interact with other musicians. And it was like, right, here you go, learn how to do that. You can make everything you want on here, go and do it. And because I loved doing it, you
learn, yeah. You YouTube, you Google,
yeah. And it was, it's interesting how that works. I think there needs to be, I lean on the side of the student a little bit more here, in that I think that they can kind of dictate what the skills are needed, because if they're interested in something, fundamentally they're going to put more effort into it. And then the byproduct of that is it will create, if everyone starts doing that, it has the potential to create industries based around interests that we don't even know that could exist yet, right? Like Twitch streaming, for example, on gaming. If you said to someone 50 years ago, you're going to watch people gaming on a screen and sit there and it's going to be like a multi-million pound industry, people would have been like, absolutely
don't get me started. Adam Grocott at Grainville, he's desperate to get esports in, which is now up to an A-level qualification, but it's persuading the parents, the teachers, those people. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Yeah. Mum and Dad, I want to be a gamer.
Yeah.
So we touched upon it a little bit there, but how important are these digital skills becoming compared to the more traditional skills? You spoke about, my opinion on maths. We'll probably touch upon that in a little bit.
I'm
and
a maths
spelling.
teacher, we kind of weirdly don't disagree entirely.
Yeah, which is slightly odd, but again, it's the same with spelling. We're both notoriously bad at spelling and things like that. But
tech savvy?
Yeah. How much time should we be spending at schools or and later in life learning these more traditional skills, or should we be learning how to use the tools of today and tomorrow to void the need for those traditional skills?
Well,
is it a balance?
Well, I think one of the running jokes at Digital Jersey for a number of years when I moved from a school to the environment was the amount of school leavers in that 18 to 23 bracket that would come through the doors. And as I taught Ebola as a girls' school, the first thing they would say is, "Hello, Mr. Steele," right? And it was just becoming this joke. And it's not because I rate myself as a digital teacher. We just immersed the girls in technology, and then they came to use it as a tool and be comfortable with it, and we seem to see more of them there. So when it comes to those traditional skills, I thought when we went one device to one pupil at the school that those traditional subjects like history and English were going to be very resistant to the technology. But weirdly, they were my biggest adopters, right, because it saved them time. And the reality is, if you think about your work life, how much do you write down with a pen and pencil, or how much do you type? And the controversial thing I would say is, and all the primary teachers will shout at me, so I'm not talking about early years. There's loads of stuff about language formation and writing. I'm talking post 10, 11 years old. Should we be teaching handwriting or pushing handwriting or teaching touch typing? because that will stop you getting repetitive strain injury. I've got a terrible wrist here from it that's combined snowboarding and bad typing style. And that's important. And it would save us productivity wise. Could you imagine if everyone in the workplace in Jersey was a touch typist? Productivity would simply go up from that one thing alone.
Yeah.
So absolutely, digital skills, it should be a compulsory subject, not computing. There's a bit of a, like, that would turn you off, right? As a thing.
Definitely. Just
but
the word.
knowledge of IT, right? When your technology, when your internet comes to your house and you've got rubbish Wi-Fi in there, it's not the telco's fault. It comes to your door in Jersey flawless. From then on in, it's your modem, have you got a mesh network, blah, blah. People just need to have those basic understandings of what that is without getting too technical. So yeah, how important is digital skills? It's the most important skill, I would say now.
Yeah,
we're going to get to maths and writing and stuff like that, but it has leapfrogged as a basic skill.
So we're all very aware of ChatGPT at the moment. This is quite a nice segue from us talking about traditional skills, because ChatGPT seems to be the go-to tool at the moment. I think by the time this goes out, they've probably worked out their business model, and it's going to be a paid...
About $42 a month, I think,
which
is the target,
be interesting.
right?
A small price to pay for a dissertation to be written for you, I think. But how does that affect the traditional school subjects? Like, I have spoken to you about this analogy before of if you saw someone on a building site digging a hole with their hands instead of a shovel, you would think they were slightly deranged. But in school, we kind of seem to, especially when I was at school, there's this encouragement to not necessarily use the tools and get the fundamentals. I was still definitely handwriting essays at school. I definitely wasn't allowed to use, like, I think in real-time spell check, I couldn't have my phone up with the spell checker tool in it while I was writing or any of that. Does that need to change? Has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, the schools, there are institutions that are going to be very worried about this. I did a ChatGPT article just to put proof and case for some teachers and put it through a plagiarism checker, 0%. Right. So every time you put the same question, it's going to give you a slightly different version, which is scary as a teacher. But while there are tools being developed to, like, maybe catch that out, it's chicken egg. We're coming back round and round in circles. You're always going to be chasing your tail on this. You've got to embrace it. It's going to be a tool of the future. The way I was thinking about it is my son just got a phone for Christmas. It is going to be the worst phone he ever owns, and it's good. Right, I got him a decent one, not too bad, Android, so we can disagree with that about Apple Android, but it is going to be the worst. He's going to look at that as I do a Nokia 3310 brick, which was my greatest phone of all time. It was my first.
Well, it had Snake as well, didn't it?
It had Snake as well, and I played it too much. And that's where ChatGPT is. It is the worst version of AI that you are going to get. So if it's already scared people, we haven't even contemplated how hard it's going to be. So from my perspective, we've got to embrace it as a research tool. I think I said to you the other day, if I'm going to do some research, I don't want to actually spend my time on the punctuation, spelling, and grammar. I want to spend my time fact-checking. That's the greatest threat of today. Is the information you get on the internet true or false? Because the majority of it is either false or, biased in some way to tell a story. And that's where I want people to spend the time, not that content creation. So sorry, English teachers.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think we are fundamentally at a pivotal moment where the inception of all these AI tools are reshaping industries of tomorrow. And at the moment we're at school, and it's always been the case at school, where you're taught as best you can to be prepared for the world of tomorrow that no one knows what exists or what is going to exist. And at the moment we're at a crux where even more so we don't know what's going to exist. So it's like, if we don't master these tools now, you're not going to be in a good way trying to we don't even know what jobs might exist tomorrow.
Get me on that one. It's always the thing people throw out. But you come to that kid, right? I know teachers that aren't worried about ChatGPT because if people don't know, if you've got Word online and you've ever used it, it tracks every single keystroke that you do. And teachers can just press a button and see how that document was constructed. So it's easy to check if someone's copy and pasted. But I don't mind if they've copy and pasted an article and then I see them going back and making those little edits to make it theirs, checking numbers and redoing them and making it a quality content rather than just a nice story.
For sure. So just to change tack a little bit, we've spoken a lot about young people, and they've obviously grown up using technology, so it's like an extension of themselves in many instances.
I'll have a comment. Carry on.
But a lot of older generations lack basic digital skills. I
Yep.
should have attached a stat to that, and I did some research on it. But basically, a lot of older people aren't comfortable using, what I would consider basic digital technologies, whether it's like an application on a laptop or whether it's, I don't know, fiddling around with the back of the TV trying to plug a HDMI in. That's always quite a fun one to watch my dad do. But how much of an issue is this, and what can we do about it? Or what needs to be done about it?
I'm sorry, Mum, but I'm not that she'll be watching this. But I was around there the other day just sorting out a tech issue, literally just pressing back up on our old iPad and pressing restore on the new iPad. That's what I went round to do. And I was round my godparents' house sorting out a mesh issue that they had there. And it was literally unplug, replug, right? It's the fear. I will actually bite back a little bit and say the youth of today might use technology, but they don't understand technology. It's become almost too easy. If you want to pair your new AirPods to your phone, you open the box, put it next to the iPhone, and it says, "Is this you?" Yes, done. Right?
Fantastic.
That's it. It's glorious. User experience. You must love it. Little animations. You know what you like.
Yeah.
Back in the day, if I wanted Bluetooth, I'd have to find the right driver for the right computer, download it, make sure it was also, and go through this whole process. I even had to understand where to go to get that stuff. So I would bite back about, I hate the term digital native because actually I think we've lost a lot of technical skills along the way. So I don't see it. And I kind of said to the team the other day, if I was to produce a piece of content, we mentioned it before earlier, that went across the island and anyone could understand it, it would be like Wi-Fi. It's the number one thing that we search for all the time. It's the number one thing we get annoyed with when it doesn't go right. And just understanding a few little things like, oh, actually, I've put my router in the bottom corner of my house when actually I should put it in the middle of my house. And these kind of just very simplistic things.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just for old people. It's for the young people as well, but to a lesser extent, because the old people have a fear of pushing the button. Kids will push all the buttons until the one works. And I think that's the only difference.
And they're not even physical buttons anymore, they're touchscreen buttons.
Of course they are. But they'll press it, but they won't press that button. My mum was looking at something and wouldn't press it because she was afraid what it would do. Whereas kids are like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll just undo it later and just, it's fear rather than knowledge.
It leads quite nicely into the idea that like we were saying there, I love a no-code solution. For example, you love having access to code, say for a website, for example, so you can do more, whereas I prefer just fiddling around with nice looking blocks to make stuff look pretty, which I guess is the newer way of doing things, not necessarily the right way. But that is quite interesting how over the course of, I don't even know how many generations divide us. Try not to be rude. Like one or two generations, I don't know.
40 something.
Yeah. But it's funny how even in such a short period of time, both trying to do a similar thing, what we get used to using and what we like to use to find solutions changes and is consistently changing.
Yeah, but I've not got a problem with like the low code blocky options because, I said I might use it today, we got this Microbit. It was this little bit at the front was one given to every student, a year 7 student back in the day, and people were coding with it, and it's just blocks that they drag in to do, but they understand the logic. And we'll get to maths later about what's more powerful, kind of times tables or logic. I think I'm already hinting to which one it is. And once they understand the logic, they can then flick a button to see the code if they want to fine tune. But not everybody wants to fine tune. Some people just need it to work.
Yeah.
But what blocky code and low code options have done is made it more accessible to everyone to have a go, that fear option. If I showed you the HTML and went, right, go ahead, edit one comma, and you're gone. Whereas with the blocky stuff, there's much more, accessibility.
Yeah, I think it's as soon as you get as soon as you look at anything HTML, you're like instantly. Well, I grew up watching The Matrix. You're like, now I'm in The Matrix, looking at it, and instantly it's scary. But after spending some time doing the courses that you've done, and you can see that actually it's just breaking it down, and it does give you more.
Oh, yeah, I'm no HTML coder, but I can break it down into going, I know the bit I'm after, and that's all we want, a confidence and a kind of literacy of technology.
Yeah. So again, to kind of we touched upon it a bit there in terms of digital inclusion. And a recent study that I read, according to the European Commission, 44% of Europeans between 16 and 74 do not have basic digital skills. Quite a large number across quite a large portion. How do we, like future-proof ourselves in terms of digital inclusion?
I actually see it getting worse and not better. We're in this kind of weird, we do a lot of forums, we talk to a lot of businesses and groups over on the island. And 3 years ago, when I joined DJ, people were going, we need T-shaped people that kind of have some understanding, but are specialists in this area. The next year, it was kind of, can't quite find those people and they're quite expensive. Can we train up our internal people? And that's got, we've seen a lot of it. Upskilling, we've seen over the last, I think, say 17 months, we've seen 3,000 people apply for the courses that we do at Digital Jersey. And recently at an event, it was more, we need people. We're actually just struggling for physical people. And because businesses are struggling for people, they're coming in and demanding higher wages for fewer skills because it's a supply and demand issue. And so if there's no incentive to build more skills because you're still getting paid, why would you? We're inherently lazy as people. Why would I want to do something when I can get paid for not doing it at the same time? So the problem is at the moment, people don't want to pay for their own professional development, and businesses are, directed elsewhere, filling in wage rises, cost of living, all these other things that are more important to everybody. And digital skills are slipping by the wayside. And it's really important for organizations like ourselves, which I think sounds like a plug, but I genuinely mean it, to be that trusted provider, to keep G'ing everyone up and saying, come to Digital Jersey for free courses. But someone has to pay for that, and government has been really generous with fiscal stimulus plans and everything that's gone through, but that money has run out. They've rightly turning their eyes to housing and all the things that matter to people right now. And I think it's time for businesses to step up, if I'm being blunt. I'll say it out loud. There you go. Controversial thing done. Yeah. It's not their focus, but it will become more than a crisis that already exists. There's my warning. 3 years' time, we'll do this podcast again. I say, told you so. Should have invested in skill. No one says don't invest in digital skills, but no one's quite willing to go over the line and pay for it because of all the other noise that's going on.
I guess a challenge in that is even just defining what digital skills are and what that means. Does that mean, Word, Excel, Office 365? Does it mean you need to know how to do basic coding? Does it mean you need to be able to, do basic video editing, whatever it might mean? I think for me, especially when you talk about digital skills, when you look at it at a surface level, it seems like it's a small thing. And then when you kind of peel back the layers, you're like, oh, okay, no, this is actually really complicated because, again, we don't know what is going to be around tomorrow. And we're trying to prepare people for a tomorrow that we don't know about, and it's everyone's responsibility to get everyone kind of upskilled to be able to partake in or be competitive in the employer's market tomorrow, right? So it's
and I think it has to evolve quite quickly, because while we still need these functional things, so I'm trying to G people around different businesses to say, can we have a technology pact, a thing where we can all agree on some core competencies that all businesses must have? And it's proving difficult because everybody has different wants and needs. And there used to be something called the ECDL, the European Driving License, to do it. And it was really functional. But it was useful to businesses to say, this is a thing. And, we're talking with the British Computer Society about they're upgrading it now. It's not the European one, it's the international driving license. But it's got some core functionality in there, but it's adding some more modern parts. And I think businesses need to give employees time out of their busy day, and time is a valuable commodity to do these things. Like we're saying, schools must do digital, compulsory subject. I think businesses also have to say you need a basic qualification. Where that comes from, DJ's happy to help. There's other providers out there, but there does need to be genuine time rather than lip service paid to that.
For sure.
But my one nugget to take away would be data. The flow of where your information goes is becoming the most vital commodity. Typing in Excel, rightly or wrongly, hey, ChatGPT will do that for us soon. And the writing of stuff, hey, we've got tools that will do that.
Yeah.
Understanding how your organization, where this information goes and that cause and effect, that's for me is the digital skill of the future.
Fair play. And we've spoken before about that actually being perhaps higher up the chain in businesses as well. It's not just an entry level situation.
No. When I especially when I talk about my experience when it comes to a school, for example, they always say, make friends with two people, the admin team and the IT team, right? And I think that's the same for any business, if I'm being honest. And when we asked the administration team, what is it that annoys you? they're the ones that do the same jobs over and over and over. Management don't know what that person does over and over. They just want the output, and it's what happening, right? I'm
Mhm.
paying these people to do a job, outcome is happening. But you talk to the people actually, who are doing the work, and then if you can automate their lives and make them more productive, that has an impact elsewhere. So actually, I'm more of a bottom up person when it comes
Right.
to efficiency rather than top down,
Yeah.
because you have Secret Boss on Channel 4 or whatever it is. When they see, it's amazing, they don't understand.
Yeah.
And so yeah, more bottom up.
Quite nicely segues into my point here of who should be deciding what these digital skills of tomorrow are. And I like the bottom up approach in that regard, because I'm convinced that if the market or the younger generations kind of start working on things that define the skills that are needed, then by default, those industries will be created and they're going to be passionate about those. So I think it's an interesting discussion point as to where, like, who's imposing what skills are needed and who should be doing that. Is that a government thing? Is that is it a free market kind of model? Is it?
I don't think it's a government thing. I'll be blunt about that. Governments, in my opinion, have so many other focuses that are very, very important that they should have trusted partners that can kind of guide them in those decisions. Yes, they have to be strong and they have to make those decisions and understand why they're important, but not the ones to make those decisions. If I was talking about schools, again, I don't think the schools should dictate necessarily what subjects are the most important, because industry knows what they are. We do labor market insights to find out what businesses are struggling with, but that cycle is quite changeable. And so if they say this year, I need data analytics, then 3 years' time, it turns out that GPT has evolved. Data analytics is a thing of the past. Computers do it for you. They go, actually, what I need is some coders again.
Yeah.
We've already sent loads of kids through a process that takes 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me you want something different. I'm a little bit more about, we talked earlier about the passion. If you create kids that are passionate about different areas, my whole spiel at school is, I'm not asking you to do IT. I'm asking you to choose the thing you're passionate about and find out how IT improves it. That's the way in to digital skills, particularly. And I always get very annoyed when people talk about the Finnish model of education and the Chinese model of education, because China has a subculture of a secondary form of education. They come home at 3 or 4 o'clock, they'll go off and do more education. We don't have that here. Finland,
Yeah, we see it on TikTok that they built.
yeah, and you got the Scandinavian countries that put way more money into their education system, way more tax, way more everything. We can't model that as well. So I always pull out Southern Hemisphere, Australia particularly, as a model, and they run something called project-based learning, where they don't have necessarily all the subjects, but they have a community problem that needs to be fixed, and they use all the subjects to fix that problem, which engages.
So it's like a solution orientated kind of.
Absolutely, because everyone gets it, right? It's their community. They understand the flow of information, what makes this happen. I mean, if we were just to be like tongue in cheek, we say, imagine if all the kids of all 6 to 11,000, depending on primary, secondary, got together and did the hospital project.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see the result.
And they did early doors. I remember seeing somebody in Minecraft designing on the old Fort Regent space. They said if the hospital was to be here, and they built it in 1 meter by 1 meter blocks.
Wow.
Looked great, right?
Yeah.
But the kid he got the problem. He was like, oh, you're letting me use Minecraft to solve a problem. That's the angle that we need to take.
For sure. So, and I know you've been waiting for me to ask this question because it's my favourite question, but it leads on quite nicely from what you were saying there. So Rishi Sunak recently suggested that students should all be studying maths until they're 18. I vehemently disagree with this, but we won't go into that because we'll be here for far too long. But what are your thoughts on that, being a maths / IT kind of
love maths
teacher?
I'm an out and out geek, right? I'm one of these people that says I'm an Excel ninja. I'm proud of it, right? I don't care.
Are there
what
many of
people
those?
think. There's more than you think. I forced a few out the other day.
There's the
people
Excel,
saying kind of like this.
The Excel games now, isn't there, on YouTube as
We've
well?
seen it on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's an e-sport. It's an e-sport with Excel. But joking aside, I get the premise. I think everyone should have access to education up until the age of 18 and be allowed to do it and not have to apply for a sixth form college or those kind of things. But forcing people to do maths, they barely want to do it when they're 12, right? Not when they're 18. And we've seen so many products. I showed you on my phone right now. I can pick up a phone, take a photo of a maths equation. It will solve the equation for me. The need for functional maths is disappearing. But before people start shouting at me, the understanding of the higher levels of maths, if I'm lobbing a grenade in Call of Duty, that's, a inverse quadratic equation. I know that. You don't need to
I
know
definitely
that,
don't know that.
right? It's a thing that happens. But for the designers that know what has to be put into the machine, they don't need to do the calculations. The computer will do that for them. But they need to have the underlying knowledge. I used to get some people, especially when I was at De La Salle teaching it, who ended up being in some trades. And every now and again, I might get a message saying, I used Pythagoras today. But I thought you'd be proud of that.
Yeah.
Just because they were doing some building work and needed to find the diagonal. But you don't anymore. Take a photo of it. The computer will tell you exactly what it is.
I was always convinced when we were doing Pi that I was like, this is not,
No, the tools have changed. And not only that, but if you force people, I think we're going the other way, actually. I'm a big believer in technical qualifications. We're seeing T levels. I think you should be able to leave at an earlier age. But follow this. We are desperate for tradespeople, all these kind of things, not just digital. Skills in general are kind of falling by the wayside.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I keep seeing, and obviously I work in the marketing space, but I keep seeing jobs that are coming out like content creator, for example, which if I was at school and knew that that was a potential job, which is basically you need to be able to write a little bit, you need to be able to video edit a little bit, you probably need to be able to do TikTok reels and all that sort of stuff. If I knew what that was at the time, then I'd have spent way more time at school focusing on the things that would have got me there. But the definition of what it was that was going to get me there wasn't available then. And no one knew what was going to be like available. Yeah. So it's a weird concept with, like, I think it's a case of defining, like you're saying there, the technical skills needed and then redefining the traditional quote unquote stuff that we're teaching at schools to fit into more of a technical kind of.
Well, it's exams. Everything's driven by exams, right? And it's very time consuming to assess someone fairly across the whole of the UK and Jersey that you've got people on the similar par. I mean, I saw, not too far from here once where some kids were skateboarding just at the Millennium Park there, and one kid behind with a camera behind him, another one actually doing some audio. This was high level stuff, right? And they were going through
my bedroom window.
Yeah. And you imagine if they're allowed to take that video footage back to the school, properly edit that, properly get it right, do some marketing behind it, the project planning to go to the right place, storyboard that out.
Understanding the strategy behind what you're trying to achieve.
And then trying to get that on social media with a good marketing behind it. My good God, right? They've got a job straight away. Yeah. And it's hard to say in a school where you've got hundreds and hundreds of people with all these bespoke projects, but old school education isn't fit for purpose.
There you go. What a lovely takeaway to kind of segue us towards the end. But for those who've not had the chance to build their digital skills, we obviously offer digital courses at Digital Jersey. What that might look like in a few weeks, we'll find out, I'm sure. What other sources are there or resources out there? Sort of like YouTubes and your Googles and stuff like that. Where would you recommend people go?
It's the irony, really. You don't need me. You don't need me to teach digital skills. They're out there. You just put a question into YouTube. It's the new search engine. Well, you might say TikTok is now the new search engine, but it's the search engine because you see what it is. The problem we have, as which there are many studies, that people start with best intentions and drop off. Persevere. Right? If I was to do a course as I do in person, people then go, oh, I know Rory. I've heard what he says. I will do another video that he's created. You're making me create the same content that exists on the internet. It's very frustrating because just go off, have a link, do Udemy courses. There are so many different courses that you can do. I'd prefer to meet people for check-ins, like we were saying before, to say, hey, drop into Digital Jersey, have a conversation about stuff, rather than try and teach, 20, 30 people at the same time, the same thing. We're all different. You talked about earlier about your bespoke needs for wanting to do a certain software. That's what I really want to ask. I want to help people with pet projects. I want to see them develop things. And I'd love to take away the dirge of, hi, this is Power BI and this is what Power BI does and that kind of thing. So my advice, like that fear button we talked about with the older generation, is just push that YouTube button, watch something, just absorb that information in and see what happens and find the people online that you like and don't. For me, sometimes that cheesy American accent just turns me right off straight away. I can't deal with that kind of positivity of a weekend or a morning. Too positive.
Yeah.
But it's just, try it, but persevere with it. And it's easy thing to say, hard thing to do.
For sure.
But it's you don't need me. Talk myself out of a job, right?
The main takeaway from the whole podcast. We don't need this.
Don't need me at all.
No. Thanks very much for coming in and having a chat. We'll drop some links below the video to some of Rory's favourite channels in terms of digital skills. Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. And you know where we are if you want to chat on Digital Jersey. So reach out if you want any digital skills or help with digital skills, and we'll direct you all to Rory. I'm sure it'll help. Great. Thanks very much for listening.
No worries. Thanks very much.